Daniel thought he was coming home with flowers. He had finished work earlier than expected, and for once he wanted to surprise his wife. 3 years of marriage had taught him that Emily loved simple things. A quiet dinner, a cup of tea together, a small bouquet waiting on the kitchen counter. So he parked his car, walked toward the front door, and smiled as he imagined the look on her face. But before he could turn the key, he heard voices inside. His mother's voice. Then Emily's. Daniel stopped. Something about the tone made him uneasy. He couldn't hear every word at first. Then one sentence came through clearly. "You should be grateful Daniel chose you." Daniel's smile disappeared. He stood completely still. His mother continued. "You had nothing when you met him. And without him, you would have nothing now." Daniel slowly lowered the flowers. There was silence. No argument, no shouting, no angry response, just silence. And somehow, that silence hurt him more than his mother's words, because he suddenly realized that Emily wasn't fighting back. She was simply standing there and taking it. Daniel opened the door. The room went quiet. His mother turned around. Emily looked at him, and Daniel immediately saw something in her eyes that he had somehow missed for 3 years. She looked tired, not physically tired, emotionally exhausted. Before we continue, if you believe that the people we love deserve to feel safe, respected, and heard, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who may need this message, and subscribe to Kindness Thread for more emotional stories about love, family, kindness, and second chances. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Daniel and Emily had not started their marriage with wealth. They rented a small apartment. They cooked inexpensive meals. They saved money whenever they could, but they were happy. Daniel loved Emily because she never judged people by what they owned. She had grown up in a modest family. Her father repaired cars for a living. Her mother worked in a school cafeteria. Emily had learned early that money could make life comfortable, but it couldn't make someone kind. Daniel admired that about her. His mother, Margaret, did not. From the very beginning, Margaret believed Daniel could have married someone more impressive, someone from a wealthy family, someone with connections, someone she believed would fit naturally into the lifestyle she imagined for her son. Emily didn't fit that picture, but Daniel loved her, so Margaret accepted the marriage, at least on the surface. For the first few months, the comments were small. Margaret would criticize Emily's clothes, then her cooking, then the way she decorated the house. She would smile afterward and say, "I'm only trying to help." Daniel heard those comments, but he never understood how deeply they affected Emily. Whenever he asked, "Are you okay?" Emily smiled. Of course. And Daniel believed her. That was his biggest mistake. Emily wasn't okay. She had simply become very good at hiding it. At family dinners, she became quieter. When Margaret visited, Emily would disappear into the kitchen. Sometimes she would wash dishes long after everything was already clean. Daniel thought she enjoyed staying busy. He didn't realize she was trying to avoid another painful conversation. One evening, Margaret criticized Emily for buying a dress that she believed was too expensive. Another time, she told Emily that the house looked cheap. Once she even told her that Daniel had sacrificed his future by marrying someone without a wealthy family behind her. Emily never repeated those words to Daniel, not once, because she was afraid of becoming the reason he had to choose between his mother and his wife, and that fear kept her silent. Until that afternoon, Daniel stood in the doorway. His mother immediately tried to explain. "You misunderstood what I was saying." Daniel looked at Emily. "Did I?" Emily didn't answer. That was enough. He placed the flowers on the table. Then he asked his wife quietly, "Emily, how long has this been happening?" Her eyes filled with tears. She looked toward Margaret, then back at Daniel. "Does it really matter?" Daniel's heart sank. "Yes," Emily shook her head. "I didn't want to tell you. Why? Because she's your mother. Daniel stared at her. Emily continued. I knew you loved her. I knew what she meant to you. I didn't want to be the woman who made you hate your own mother. Daniel felt something inside him break. For 3 years, he had believed his wife was peaceful. Now he realized she had been protecting him. She had been swallowing her pain because she loved him, and he had mistaken her silence for happiness. Daniel turned toward Margaret. His voice remained calm. But it was different now. You can disagree with Emily. Margaret crossed her arms. But you cannot humiliate her. She is my daughter-in-law. No, Daniel replied. She is my wife. The room became completely silent. Margaret looked shocked. Daniel continued. Whatever problems you have with her, you don't get to attack her character. Margaret insisted that she had only been trying to protect him. Daniel shook his head. Protect me from what? From making a mistake. Daniel looked at Emily. Then he looked back at his mother. Marrying Emily wasn't my mistake. He paused. Allowing her to feel alone in this marriage was. Emily began crying. Daniel walked over and gently took her hand. I should have noticed, she whispered. I didn't want you to fight with your mother. I should have protected you without making you ask. Those words stayed with Emily. Because for the first time, Daniel wasn't asking her to explain why she was hurt. He was acknowledging that she had been hurt. Margaret left that evening, and the house remained quiet long after the door closed. Daniel sat beside Emily. He didn't tell her everything would magically become better. He didn't promise that his mother would change overnight. Instead, he asked her something simple. Tell me everything. And Emily finally did. She told him about every comment, every insult, every family dinner where she had smiled while her heart was breaking. She told him about the nights she had cried in the bathroom because she didn't want Daniel to hear. She told him about the times she had considered staying away from family gatherings just to protect her own peace. Daniel listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't defend his mother. He didn't say she didn't mean it. For once, he simply listened. When Emily finished, Daniel held her hand. I'm so sorry. Emily looked at him. I never wanted you to choose me over your mother. Daniel replied, I don't have to choose between loving my mother and respecting my wife. That became the beginning of a difficult change. Daniel established boundaries. His mother was welcome in their home, but disrespect was not. Family gatherings could continue, but insults would no longer be called jokes, and if someone crossed the line, Daniel promised he would speak up. Not because Emily was incapable of defending herself, but because marriage meant standing beside your partner when they shouldn't have to stand alone. The first few weeks were uncomfortable. Margaret accused Daniel of changing. She told him Emily had turned him against his family. Daniel listened. Then calmly said, No one turned me against you. I simply started paying attention. Those words hurt Margaret more than an argument would have, because they were true. Months passed. Emily slowly changed too. She began speaking more openly. She stopped apologizing whenever she disagreed. She stopped pretending everything was fine, and Daniel learned to ask a second time when she said, I'm okay. One evening, almost a year later, there was a knock at their door. Emily opened it. Margaret stood outside. She was holding an old photograph. She looked nervous. I want to talk to you. Emily stepped aside. Margaret entered. She placed the photograph on the table. It showed Daniel as a little boy sitting beside his mother. Margaret looked at it for a long time. I was afraid, she finally said. Emily said nothing. I was afraid that after Daniel married you, I wouldn't matter anymore. Her voice began to shake. So I blamed you for a fear that wasn't your fault. Emily's eyes softened. Margaret continued. I thought if I made you feel like an outsider, you would eventually leave. Daniel, who had been standing nearby, looked stunned. Margaret looked at Emily. I was wrong. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Margaret said the words Emily had waited years to hear. "I'm sorry." Emily didn't immediately hug her. She didn't pretend the past had disappeared. Instead, she said, "I accept your apology." Margaret nodded. "But forgiveness will take time." "I understand." And for the first time, Margaret didn't argue. She respected the answer. Over the following months, things slowly changed. Not perfectly, not instantly, but honestly. Margaret began treating Emily differently. She asked for her opinion. She complimented her cooking. She even started helping around the house during family gatherings. One evening, Emily was preparing dinner when Margaret quietly entered the kitchen. She looked at the food, then smiled. "You know, I always thought you couldn't cook." Emily laughed. "And now?" Margaret smiled. "Now I know I was wrong about a lot of things." Emily laughed through tears. That moment didn't erase the past, but it created a future. Years later, Daniel would still remember the afternoon he walked through that front door holding a bouquet of flowers. At the time, he thought he was bringing Emily a surprise. He didn't know that he was about to discover the truth about his marriage. He didn't know that the woman he thought was fine had been quietly hurting for years, and he didn't know that his greatest responsibility as a husband wasn't simply providing a home. It was making sure his wife never felt alone inside that home, because sometimes people don't ask for help, they don't scream, they don't complain, they simply become quieter. And if we aren't paying attention, we may mistake that silence for peace. Emily didn't need Daniel to fight everyone in the world. She needed him to notice her, to believe her, to listen. And when he finally did, their marriage became stronger than it had ever been. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who may need this reminder, and subscribe to Kindness Thread for more emotional stories about family, love, kindness, and second chances. And tell me in the comments, silence deserves to be heard. If you believe nobody should have to suffer quietly just to keep a family together. Because sometimes the person who says, "I'm fine," isn't asking you to leave them alone. Sometimes they're secretly hoping you will look into their eyes and ask one more time, "Are you really okay?" And sometimes that one question can change everything.